Henry Rollins has this column in the LA Weekly for some time now, and I can't count the number of times I would read this thing and wonder why my buddies from way back would idolize this person. I love how every other story he writes, he has to start off with reminding us how he used to be poor. I mean, this is a guy who's been having his ass kissed since the 80s. He still goes on about how he's one of us. I mean, how many articles does he have to start with? When I used to play in dive bands in Pacoima. I mean, it's like, give it a rest already, man, please. I remember once reading an article by some other band guy who was so enamored by Rollins that he would have gladly allowed him to fuck his wife. It's like, I mean, the hardships this Henry guy must endure. I once ran across this guy at some Greek restaurant on 3rd Street where he was sitting a table away from me and my wife. He was going on about his kale salads, the coconut water he enjoys drinking, and the latest obscure book he's reading. He sounded exactly the way he writes. I swear to God, I was waiting for him to start on his last shopping spree to Lululemon. I mean, it took everything for me to not lean over and tell him to shut the fuck up. I mean, this is the punk god my friends worship, and probably still do. What really pisses me off about this guy is the way he rails against the Second Amendment. I mean, he's just another tired-ass, guilt-ridden celebutard who has to encroach on every American's ability to defend themselves. Because, I mean, we all can afford to live up in the completely gentrified enclaves nested up in the Hollywood Hills. And if ever the situation arises, I mean, we all have the money to hire a fucking bodyguard when we need one, right? He starts his column sarcastically calling Trump a comrade. Like there's actually someone in Hollywood who has problems with comrades. But I guess these days, all these leftists, for some reason, all of a sudden Russia's the enemy. I remember they used to suck up to Russia like it was nothing. Now all of a sudden they have a problem with Russia. Like we needed any more proof that McCarthy was right. Quoting Trump, Rollins begins, "Today's ceremony has very special meaning because today we're not merely transferring power from one administration to another or from one party to another. But we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the American people." Now, how can anyone find a problem with this, you might ask? When President Trump refers to the American people, that's exactly what he means. And that's exactly what Comrade Rollins' panties were all in a bunch about. Because there's not one wealthy Democrat out there that thinks we, the lowly people, are capable of governing ourselves on any level. We need Hillary Clinton, or as Hillary Clinton puts it, to be brought to heel, like we're some fucking dogs. Rollins then tries using the appointment of Betty Davos as an example of how President Trump is contradicting his intentions by giving the power back to us, the people, because Davos is in support of school vouchers. Vouchers that gives families the opportunity to escape failing school systems. A perfect example of how the left fights to keep the power in the hands of governing unions, regardless of how incompetent they are, and out of the hands of us, the concerned families. I read somewhere that growing up, Rollins attended a strict all-boys school in Potomac, Maryland, called the Beulah School. It seems Rollins' mother felt it was important for her son to get a good education. Luckily for little Henry, his mother had the choice as to where her son was able to attend school. But, we don't need that choice. We're not him. Talk about a fucking hypocrite. Rollins continues, that Comrade Trump is not a crusader for the people is a known fact to some, but for others, it's going to take a while for that to sink in. It doesn't take a scholar to know how thin-skinned, vengeful, and petty Trump can be. Trump to many on the right was a scary choice to back. So how pathetic was it that so many rushed to vote for him because they feared Hillary more? Hillary, the standard bearer for feminism, the woman who would break the glass ceiling to become the first woman president, made her political ascent riding the back of a serial rapist. A rapist she spent her life trailing behind, putting out every sexual fire he set. Hillary, whose Clinton Foundation's global initiative was little more than a money laundering scheme where two-bit dictators could purchase political favors. Favors that in many cases went against the American people's best interest and security. And here I am reading some washed-up rocker go on about Trump not being a crusader for the American people. It's like, nigga, please. I find it interesting how the donations to the Clinton Foundation have since dried up. I guess without power, there's no favors to sell, right there, Rollins? The article continues with Trump saying how what truly matters is not what party controls our government, but whether our government is controlled by the people. January 20th, 2017 will be remembered as a day that people became the rulers of this nation again. The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer. And I shit you not, to which Rollins replies, and I quote, "There are no forgotten people in America." End fucking quote. People like Henry Rollins don't see themselves as forgotten. As far as he's concerned, no one's forgotten. Because, I mean, when Hillary Clinton would fly into town to campaign, she'd only visit those unforgotten people of Brentwood, Beverly Hills, Pacific Palisades, Malibu, and where Henry lived, up in the Hollywood Hills. She kissed the asses of all those people who were stuffing campaign billions down her pantsuit pockets. Everyone else, Mr. Rollins, was forgotten. That bitch never went to Compton to kiss babies. And if she had gone to Compton, it was to visit that community's Planned Parenthood to check to see how many future super predators were aborted that week. I mean, we're always hearing about the evil billions the Koch brothers are pumping into politics, but God forbid anyone mentions the political contributions that come out of the super rich, the left-leaning gated communities of California. Their money in politics, I guess that's not evil. I mean, Republican money, now that's evil. The thing about Trump is he's a lifelong Democrat who'd only switch parties when it came time to run for president, which he did a number of times. Trump, I kind of consider like a classic liberal, one of those forgotten creatures that used to populate the party before it was taken over by a bunch of regressive nutjobs. Like John F. Kennedy, he was one of these classic liberals, and like Trump, he wouldn't be welcomed into the modern Democrat Party. So when Trump says what really matters is not which party controls the government, but which or whether our government is controlled by the people, I believe he means it with all of his heart. Because right now, today, the Republican Party is headed by a classic liberal who is kicking more aggressive ass than any Republican congressman, senator, or president ever has. And that is why we love him. Trump then goes on about the mothers and children trapped in poverty in the inner cities, education systems flushed with cash but leave its students depraved of knowledge, failed industry, gangs, drugs, unrealized potential. And I swear to you, somehow Rollins manages to find some faults in these observations. Henry Rollins, blind, cynical, and completely married to his party. A party that's completely lost its mind. Then Rollins continues by fear-mongering, claiming that gays, non-whites, and Muslims are green-lit for maximum carnage. I challenge Rollins to find one quote that specifically brands Donald Trump a racist. Not 10, not 20, just one. Words that came out of his mouth, not words tailored by CNN, MSNBC, not a variation of reworded versions or translations spoon-fed to him by the mainstream media, a quote from out of Trump's own mouth. He won't be able to give us one. Rollins will no doubt make reference to the ban of Muslim refugees, which in fact isn't a ban on Muslim refugees, but a temporary common sense solution to halting those who are coming in from war-torn countries that are ill-equipped to adequately vet those who are trying to come over. The primary responsibility of the president is to ensure the safety of the American people, not hand out strawberry-scented welfare checks or rainbow-colored food stamps or public housing. And I assure you, at any point, if Trump fails in this task to keep the country safe and secure, Rollins will be the first to accuse President Trump of incompetence and demand he be impeached. Hell, I will. I'd love to just stop now. I mean, I'm floored at how surfacey this Henry Rollins guy is. I mean, I've thought for some time now that he was supposed to be some thought-provoking spoken word poet or something. I mean, I'm like very disappointed. But I'm going to push forward. I'm almost done. And Trump continues. He goes on to speak about us unifying as one country to help the lives of those unfortunate people, to make their lives better. And somehow, some fucking way, Rollins manages to find a way to shit on even that idea. How? How the hell do you do that? When President Trump makes reference to strengthening old and new alliances, Rollins takes this opportunity to bash on Israel, our only ally in that area. I had no idea Rollins was an anti-Semite. But, as John Kerry said, you're either Democrat or a Jew. You can't be both. And I assure you, Rollins isn't a Jew, or at least not that I'm aware of. Jew hater, maybe. Jew, I have no idea. And then President Trump suggests that when you open your heart to patriotism, there is no room for prejudice. To this, Henry Rollins, he jokes about how he doesn't want to be forced to hug Ted Nugent or something. Because, I can see why he would be offended to a statement like that. Patriotism, who needs that shit, right? God forbid Henry expresses any love for the country that made him such a success, that made everything so possible for him. Because, he could have done this in Moscow or North Korea or maybe even Cuba. Fuck America. Fuck patriotism. What's that shit all about? And sure enough, the liberal failsafe, go-to 100% of the time, he then had to go and imply that every Trump voter was a bigot. That's just bold, thought-provoking, deep, and so unexpected. And like the wordsmith that he is, he continued by calling this the worst inauguration speech ever. And he did it without even using the word like before the sentence. I got to hand it to him on that one. He then has the balls to imply that Kellyanne Conway is responsible for starting and pushing the fake news narrative. Obviously, Rollins has missed out on Hillary's speeches of late. She went from covering her vast ass with a vast right-wing conspiracy to fake news. Fake news, the left's latest attempt at silencing those they oppose, and Rollins is calling us Orwellian. He concludes by trying to convince us that somehow he's not butthurt, even though he just spent the past 500 or so words sounding like a Twinkie who just got gorilla fucked by Mr. Mark. And to wrap this shit up, he then threatens those on the right with soon-to-come attacks from hackers, comedians, and the ever-present nonpartisan army of reporters headed by none other than Chuck Todd. Henry Rollins, punk rock god, ass clown, is hiding behind Chuck fucking Todd. Man, did punk rock die a slow, painful death or what?